Welcome to Jen Taub Live, where we focus on money law with a touch of snark. Now, over the weekend, because I took Thursday and Friday off for work, so really from Wednesday until this morning, the hinges have come off our democracy. It is so crazy that I actually had to make a list, guys, make a list and edit that list of all the batshit crazy stuff that happened. And so let's run down the list before I get to our top story about Tom Homan, the border czar, before he was appointed last fall, taking $50,000 in cold hard cash in a shopping bag from some business interests who were giving it to him as a quid pro quo in advance of an expected appointment. What did the businessman give him? We would normally call this a bribe. More on this in a moment. They gave him a bribe, essentially. This for that. Here's $50,000 in cash, Mr. Homan, because you say you're going to be appointed if Trump is elected. And in exchange for this, we would really like some contracts, because if you are going to be the border czar, there are going to be a lot of contracts like wall building and God knows what. That's not even the worst thing that happened. We'll get to that. Cash in a shopping bag. Okay. What the fuck? What the fuck? And it's not just that Tom Homan took cash in a shopping bag. And these folks, these so-called business interests, were actually FBI agents, right? It's not just that he did that. What the most important thing is that when Trump got into office, his FBI decided to end the investigation into Homan and not pursue any charges. Now, we're going to get to the legal side of this because it's really complicated, but I can lay it out to you real clearly. Certainly, I can do this about what they could have done and the excuses the Trump administration is giving now for the cover-up. Okay, so what the hell happened? We were on the air here Wednesday morning. And Wednesday morning, I was talking about Kash Patel because the day before he had testified before the House and crashed and burned. Well, of course, he would testify the following day before the Senate, but that's not the biggest thing that happened. On Tuesday, he testified before the House, but on Wednesday evening, Brendan Carr of the FCC threatened ABC Broadcasting Company, American Broadcasting Company. So we have the head of the Federal Communications Commission, Brendan Carr, threatened a company, a corporation, a for-profit business in the United States. The government threatened them. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Threaten them that they really needed to take Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, off the air. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Threaten them with pulling their broadcast license. Now, as a result of this threat, Disney announced that they were pulling Jimmy Kimmel, the comedian, off the air indefinitely. That happened Wednesday night. Okay. Then on Thursday, Donald Trump looked like more of a clown than the royal family, even at a state visit where he so shambolically read his prepared remarks that he had no idea that referencing George Orwell must have been his speechwriter fucking hating him. Okay. And then on Friday, we had a person, Kat Obugazala, who's running for Congress in Illinois. We met her partner, Ben Collins, who runs The Onion, a few weeks ago here. Kat was at a protest, peacefully protesting at an ICE facility, and she was slammed to the ground. And the supposed proponents of nonviolence and the supposed haters of political violence said it was a good thing. We'll get to that. I'm still on Friday, right? Also, we had, I believe it was Friday, a vote in the House of Representatives to honor Charlie Kirk, an unrepentant racist, to honor him, not to condemn the manner of his death, but to honor the way he lived his life. And believe it or not, 95 Democrats in the House voted in support of this. Many just didn't vote at all. Some actually voted it down. That happened. What else happened? On Saturday. Saturday was utterly off the chain. So this Saturday, which was September 20th, 2025, I wish this were the bottom. I really do. But you know the expression, it's going to get worse before it gets worse. That's where we are. Now, I've got some solutions, but I'm going to lay it out. Friday was un-effing believably off the chain. Donald Trump, in a screed that he wrote out on Truth Social, we believe it was meant to be a private message to his Attorney General Pam Bondi. But Donald Trump is like Nixon on steroids with brain damage, because he sent out into the public space a demand that his Attorney General prosecute his political enemies and try to find something, or basically threatening that she will be replaced by someone. I kid you not. That same day, Donald Trump's Pentagon said that they were going to expel any reporters who didn't write what was approved by the regime. And then also on Saturday, yes, it continues, TikTok, which was supposed to have divested or supposed to have been spun off like an American unit, right? This was like a law passed. It was a big deal. And Donald Trump keeps delaying it despite not really having the authority to do that. Donald Trump brokered a deal where his closest friends and allies will be controlling TikTok in the US. Okay. That's the bad shit that happened, okay? But the good stuff, the good side, people are really pushing back across the political spectrum. Now, one last thing. We will get to in Crazy Town some of the stuff that went down at yesterday's funeral for Charlie Kirk. But we will also talk about who he was as a man, not the way in which he died, because of course he should never have died in that manner. Now, let us begin, my friends, with the breaking news around Tom Homan. And this, by the way, the Tom Homan story broke on Friday. So it's a crazy, crazy, crazy last 5 days. I'm going to share with you the reporting from Kara Lenig of MSNBC. She used to be at the Washington Post on the news about Tom Homan and this bag of cash. And then I'm going to explain to you, so you're really smart, what's actually going on here. You've probably seen some legal pundits try to explain it, but no one's called on me, right? I am a co-author of a white collar crime casebook. I wrote a very popular book that was reviewed in the New York Times called Big Dirty Money. I teach white collar crime. I could opine on this too. So you're going to get it right here.
Well, it is good to see you. Thank you for joining us with this incredible reporting tonight. Can you break down for us what you've learned?
Yes. What Ken Delaney and my colleague here at MSNBC and I learned was that in the summer of 2024, when Trump was running for office and Tom Homan was at his side on many a campaign trail event and basically publicly touting that he was going to be an important part of the president's border initiatives and in the administration, during that time, the FBI began hearing from the subject of another investigation that Tom Homan was soliciting bribes and doing so in exchange for promises that he would eventually be in the administration and be able to deliver and influence federal contracts to help those businesses that paid him. Now, what the FBI decided to do was have a series of undercover agents approach that intermediary and also approach Tom Homan. And our sources and an internal document that we reviewed show that the FBI recorded him receiving this money in September 20th in a meeting they arranged. This is all before Trump is president, but it is really interesting because they didn't go after Tom Homan. They happened to learn from another investigation that Tom Homan apparently had this scheme of making money by offering this.
Carol, incredible reporting that you and Ken did there. Can you walk us through what the response has been from various officials that you have presented this reporting to, whether it is at the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, or perhaps even the White House? What have you been able to learn from officials in response to this investigation?
Yes, the White House very quickly got back to us about this today. Kudos to them for that. And also Kaj Patel and Todd Blanche, the acting Deputy Attorney General, all issued statements to us in which they told MSNBC essentially that this was an improper investigation begun during President Biden's term, and that it was an attempt to go after a Trump ally, and they shuttered the case because they viewed it as lacking sufficient evidence to proceed. Of course, that is not at all how the FBI agents or the prosecutors working on this case viewed it.
Okay, let's do the legal breakdown here, guys. First, let's even assume for a moment, which is not true, that where there's smoke, there's fire. There's not fire. In other words, let's assume for a moment that there really wasn't anything nefarious going on here. Nothing illegal. Just some guy trying to take $50,000 in cash for some legitimate future lobbying. Okay, let's just assume that. Why in the world, knowing this, would Donald Trump have someone with such a sketchy background who appears to be poised to actually take bribes, take money on the side? Why would you have, knowing that the FBI had caught him in a kind of sting, trying to take bribes? You know, even if you thought it wasn't enough to bring a case, even if you thought, oh, it's not a big deal, why would you put him in the administration, someone of such low character, trying to cash in on the side, not do what's best for the American people? Someone for whom ultimately they could maybe do something really bad, something really criminal in the future. Well, I think you know the answer to that. Being crooked and having a shady history and potential crimes for which the statute of limitations has not run is the ideal candidate for Donald Trump. Having a compromised past and a bad reputation is a feature and not a bug. Why? It's the same thing with Eric Adams, why they were trying to hold that prosecution over his head so he would do what they wanted, Donald Trump's bidding in New York. It's the same reason why Donald Trump wanted to appoint Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. It's the same reason why Pete Hegseth, with credible allegations of sexual assault, became the Secretary of Defense. Donald Trump likes to surround himself with people where he can keep a tight rein on them, because for actual reasons, like he could always find a way to prosecute them. For moral reasons, because how dare they judge him when he does bad shit? And finally, if they actually do something that's unpopular, he can throw them under the bus saying that they were crooked the whole time. Okay? So this is a problem regardless of what you think of the legal issues. Now let's look at this. You're seeing a lot of discussion, the Trump administration in particular, and those who stupidly parrot their response, that the reason why the case was dropped was because there was no legal basis yet to bring charges. Now, I just want to be clear to you, that's a half truth. You don't drop a case for that reason, you continue pursuing it. So let me explain this to you. There are different charges here, some that they were investigating apparently. One was bribery of a public official. The other was conspiracy to commit bribery of a public official. And finally, there was something called wire fraud. Now, what's complicated is that under the definition of a public official, in the particular statute we'd be looking at, you have to either be an actual public official, like in your office, or appointed to that role. And at that point, Donald Trump had not yet been elected. Okay, so that's a statutory issue. A second issue is, even if Tom Homan had been in his position and was considered a public official, a government official, for the purposes of this bribery statute, under the Supreme Court's recent cases, you really need a quid pro quo, an agreement to not just, here, I'll give you this money, give me access. It's got to be, here's this money, and it's for a specific act. So that could be getting agreeing to get them the contract, because that would be an official act, assuming it was Homan who would be awarding the contract. Well, of course, the biggest problem here is the first part, that he wasn't yet a government official. Now, would that mean you would drop the case? Absolutely not. What you would do, one would think, is not appoint him to his role because he looked willing to engage in this. But what are the next steps? You would continue to engage in the sting operation. Another thing you could do, however, is look to the conspiracy charges, that there was this, that he entered into a conspiracy with this third party, right? This third party intermediary that's mentioned, to solicit that it was a conspiracy, the object of which was to take money in exchange for engaging in official acts in his role. And you might say, well, but would that deal with future acts? And it sort of depends. It becomes a harder case, right? There's a third charge, the wire fraud. And that is just trying to separate someone from their money and property under false or fraudulent pretenses. I think the wire fraud claim could work very well because there could be an argument to bring forward that he actually didn't have the job. He maybe wasn't even told he would get it, and he was taking money from people. Now, that's a harder case also to bring because the person on the other side knew that Donald Trump hadn't been yet elected. Okay, so this is the complexity. But you don't drop a case like this, and you certainly don't appoint someone to the role, right? What you would do next, guys, and I'm sure you've heard this, is the last piece is, what about tax evasion, also known as tax fraud? When you get a big bag of cash, do you report that income as lobbying income? It seems like that would be a slam dunk. And now I want to pull up for you so you can see the statute I'm talking about. Okay. And I want to be clear here. I don't want to talk about the tax piece. That seems the most promising avenue. But again, it was not the intention of Donald Trump to ferret out illegality. It was to hold, I believe, the prospect of prosecution over his head. So he does Donald Trump's bidding. And then, of course, to throw him under the bus at a later date, if necessary. Okay, so let me share the screen so you can see the statute that people are talking about. The main statute here is 18 U.S.C. 201, bribery of public officials and witnesses. And you can see here that there is a definition of public official, and it means, I'm going to read this to you, it can mean a member of Congress, it can mean a delegate, it can mean anyone, an officer or employee or person acting for on behalf of the United States or any department, agency, or branch of government thereof, right? Or in any official function under the authority of such department. So his role as borders are his role in the Department of Homeland Security, if right now, makes him a public official. But what about the term, because it's going to come up, a person who has been selected to be a public official? That means any person who's been nominated or appointed to be a public official, or has been officially informed that such person will be nominated or appointed. So this is a little complicated. Homan obviously had not been nominated or appointed because Donald Trump wasn't president. And what officially informed that he would be nominated and appointed, I'm not sure that Donald Trump saying he was going to put him in his administration can be considered officially informed, but this could be an interesting case to bring. That gets complicated. Everyone's focused on official act, which would be a decision or action made in this official on a matter for, okay, this is the complicated thing. Let me just read this again. Any decision or action on any question, matter, cause, suit, or proceeding that may be pending or might be brought before that public official. So if he had just promised to introduce them to folks, that wouldn't work. But I think the FBI sting operation had him promising to engage in official acts, which is award them contracts. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing that right now. Now, of course, there's the conspiracy statute and so on. Let me just tell you, there is so much smoke here that there had to be a fire burning. And the fact that the Trump administration is suggesting that not pursuing this because of a technicality, and certainly ignoring the fact that I imagine there is an IRS investigation that could happen here, is outrageous. It is a cover-up. Now, let's now talk about the possibly most significant event that transpired. Actually, let me just really quickly show you the photos of of Tom Homan in the New York Times. Right, I just want you just let you see that it wasn't just MSNBC. So let me pull that up. Okay, so I just want, again, I just want you to see that it wasn't just a cable news outlet. I want you to see what the New York Times had to say about this real quick. Let me just pull this up for you. Sorry, guys. I always want to have at least two sources when I can. So here we have Trump Justice Department closed investigation into Tom Homan for accepting bag of cash. He was recorded taking $50,000 in cash from undercover FBI agents. There were 5 bylines on this article. Okay, the cash payment was made inside of a bag from the food chain Cava. This was a long-running counterintelligence investigation that had not been targeting Homan, but it came up. And this can happen. This is very common. So I just want to share that with you. Thank you so much, Tesla's Taco. I will tell you, this would make an amazing fact pattern on a white collar crime exam, because there are these questions of, what is on the edge of this. Now, one thing I would, on the edge of these definitions, I think that I would also, of course, what a real investigation would do is have agents come talk to him and ask him about what he was doing. And when he lied, then they would have a false statements claim against him. And also possibly, depending on how they pursued the investigation, obstruction of justice. The goal was not finding the truth or ferreting out bad people or rooting out bad people so they don't get positions in the Trump administration. They want the dirtiest, most corrupt, most willing to violate the law people in the administration who are loyal out of fear and ideology to Donald Trump. Okay, folks, now let's talk about the big news from Wednesday night, because this colors everything. As I mentioned, Brendan Carr of the FCC threatened ABC because they did not like the things that Jimmy Kimmel was saying on his comedy show on air. And what he has said has been misstated. He never accused, he never celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder. He never, I think, did anything. I mean, he didn't do anything to encourage imminent violence. he didn't do anything that you would think would be a problem. Like he didn't use profanity, which you can't do on the public airwaves. Now, the threat, as I'm going to share with you in a moment from a few clips, the threat was something that ABC could have stood up to, right? They've caved before, but they could have said, we will ignore you. But the problem was the threat, it wasn't just a threat to take ABC off the air, right? Because ABC's lawyers could have gone into court right away, right? The real threat is that ABC wants to participate in a major merger. And the problem is there are guidelines in the country to stop too much concentration of ownership in our media. Because the thought is if there's too much concentration of ownership, then instead of informing the public in the public interest on the airwaves and so on, that they will be brainwashing us and furthering the financial and political interests of the owners. So there's like this 39% cap related to markets. I'm not an expert in communications laws. I'm just giving you a general thing. And that cap would have stands in the way of this merger. And to get this merger through there, often when big media companies merge, they have to divest in certain geographic markets to avoid these problems. So this is on ABC's mind, right? ABC, the managers care more about the shareholders, care more about lining their own pockets than they do about their First Amendment rights. Okay. Now, some people are saying, oh my God, that means Jimmy Kimmel has no First Amendment case here, right? Because he was just fired by his greedy boss. No, that's actually not how it works. There are Supreme Court cases that make clear that conditioning certain things, in this case, it would be merger approval upon relinquishing First Amendment rights, that's still a First Amendment issue. Okay, so let me share with you some thoughts on this. But first, Brendan Carr is a fucking hypocrite. I want to show you that in 2022, 3 years ago, Brendan Carr of the FCC said, but President Biden is right. Political satire is one of the oldest and most important forms of speech. It challenges those in power while using humor to draw more people into the discussion. That is why people in influential positions have always targeted it for censorship. That's great when Joe Biden was his boss, but Donald Trump doesn't like to be made fun of. Let's listen to what his new boss says.
When you have a network and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. If you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative on in years or something, somebody said. But when you go back and take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. They're an arm of the Democrat Party.
Okay, he is wrong. You could have someone on the public airwaves, and they don't do this, but if all they did all day long is say how much they cannot stand Donald Trump, and they just have people mocking him and going through every single thing they don't like that he did and never praising him, that is protected First Amendment speech. But I guess that's not what Brendan Carr thinks. And he will actually have hell to pay when the Democrats take over in the midterms, if they do. Let's listen to Eric Swalwell from the House in California speak to this.
So I want to make it clear, there's going to be a Democratic majority in just over a year. And to the FCC chairperson and anyone involved in these dirty deals, get a lawyer and save your records, because you're going to be in this room and you're going to be answering questions about the deals that you struck and who benefited and what the cost was to the American people because that happened.
Good. I'm glad he had to say that. There are folks with even stronger words on this. So I want to first, I'm going to get stronger and stronger. I'm going to go to Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, and then a surprising voice on this. Okay, let's listen to Chris Murphy.
It is essentially illegal for any individual company to own ownership of stations in more than 40% of markets. And that restriction exists for a lot of reasons. First, you just don't want to have any company having that much control of speech and local news in this country. But it's also just bad to have that much kind of national ownership of local news. You want local companies to own these stations to an extent, at least. But the FCC chairman has signaled that he's willing to change that rule, that he's willing to go beyond the 40% at the very moment that he was putting pressure on Nexstar to take Jimmy Kimmel down off the air. So you have to understand, these things work in tandem. The Trump administration offers something to these big companies that will make their owners billionaires, and then in turn, the big companies repress political speech or service Donald Trump's propaganda machine. This is a quid pro quo that seems to be happening in open view of everyone in the country.
Good. And by the way, he's saying 40%. I think the real number is 39. I was saying 38. You get the idea. Now, even more harshly than that, Ty Cobb, yes, I think he is the nephew or grandson of the baseball player. He's a former personal lawyer of Donald Trump. He has broken against Trump previously. I was on a panel with him a couple years ago at the University of Chicago. Really interesting, very smart lawyer. Here is what Ty Cobb had to say. This is Sam Stein, who's at Politico now, and this is him. Did a screenshot of Ty Cobb's interview with Kristen Welker. This is, again, former White House attorney. Welker asked Cobb, I want to start off by just, as someone who is a student of the law, someone who is steeped in the law, get your reaction to hearing that ABC had indefinitely suspended Jimmy Kimmel. Here's what Cobb had to say, my friends. Well, I think, Kristen, that it's evocative of what we've seen throughout history. I mean, in 1939, Dr. Goebbels and Hitler, as an instruction, removed 5 comedians, or witticisms, as they were called at the time, from the airwaves in Germany for criticizing or making fun of the government, and a number of satire ways. Putin, when he took over in the early 2000s, one of the first things he did was systematically silence political media outlets, and independent TV channels were bought out or shut down. Trump is waging war on people who offend him. You know, he's all about vengeance. And sadly, his subordinates, like one of the Project 2025 authors, Brendan Carr of the FCC, are following in line. And, you know, perhaps the Presidential Crimes Commission that Representative Swalwell called for recently can consider this at the end of this administration. But these people are, you know, abandoning our constitutional rights and our constitutional freedoms. Even Senator Loomis today, by saying, you know, she doesn't feel like enforcing the First Amendment at this point, despite having, you know, liked it when it suited her. Well, that's a violation of her oath of office, where she takes an oath to preserve and protect the Constitution. So I think this is really tragic. And I think, as Carr said yesterday, there will be more shoes to drop. I think we can count on that. This will be 3.5 more years of vengeance. And he also said, we're already in a constitutional crisis. Of course we are, my friends. Now, do I want to cheer you up? Sure, I do. But it's going to be hard to do that. And I don't want to give you false hope. So there's 2 positive things that have come out of this. Now, let me just be clear. One of the things that you should know is ABC, right? There's the broadcasting network out of New York, and then there are the local affiliate stations across the country. A lot of those local affiliates are owned by a company called Sinclair. Now, Sinclair, even if ABC, even if Disney had not pulled off Jimmy Kimmel, Sinclair said they weren't going to run Jimmy Kimmel on the local stations. So this became a nationwide phenomenon. Everyone was aware that no matter what, they weren't going to be able to see Jimmy Kimmel. So Sinclair said instead of Jimmy Kimmel, they were going to broadcast on all their local affiliates some sort of tribute to Charlie Kirk. But guess what happened? It didn't. Due to the pushback, Sinclair pulled its Kirk tribute minutes before it was set to air. And they pulled this on Friday, and they said tonight Sinclair will continue to air ABC network programming as scheduled in the late night period. The Charlie Kirk special will instead be available on the YouTube channel. Why do you think they did this? I don't know, but maybe it's because when you actually listen to what Charlie Kirk has to say, like I said, he's an unrepenting, divisive racist. That is just a fact, guys. And I'll be sharing some data on that in a second. But the other thing that happened were boycotts. People have been canceling their Disney Plus memberships online. I guess Hulu is owned by Disney and so on. They've made it more difficult to end your membership. There are like multiple hoops to jump through. Now, people are saying that Disney has lost money. Their stock has crashed. Don't confuse the fact that the value of the stock has gone down with Disney necessarily losing that same amount of money. I believe their stock will continue to fall. I think they're going to have a Target situation where people are boycotting Target. And one of the biggest problems isn't just their Disney channels. It's physical Disney World and Disneyland properties. You may be aware of the fact that there are a lot of people, that are called Disney adults who spend a lot of time and a lot of money vacationing at Disney resorts. And what we are seeing is, glamour.com talked about this. But what we are seeing is that there are Disney adults who are popular online who don't like Charlie Kirk and don't like what they did pulling Jimmy Kimmel off the air. I just saw the other day there was a Latino woman who is a lesbian who spends a ton of money at Disneyland, and she's telling her friends, don't go anymore. And here's what she said. With a single poster video, we can influence thousands of guests to try a food, drink, or experience in the parks, she said. I couldn't in good conscience keep giving them free publicity, knowing they don't support free speech and are willing to bow to fascism. I bet you would like to hear about that article. Let me just pull that up for you. Okay. This is, here we go. I'm pulling the actual article up that I was just giving you that screenshot of, so you can see it yourself. I'm loving it. Okay, so this is, I'm hoping this pulled up. Yay, it did. The headline here, an article by Stephanie McNeil. The Jimmy Kimmel and Disney drama has some superfans dumping the mouse. So this is Stephanie Cuevas. For most of her life, Disneyland was Stephanie Cuevas' happy place. But the news on Wednesday, September 17, about Jimmy Kimmel's late night show being suspended indefinitely was her breaking point with Disney. The next day, Cuevas made an announcement on TikTok. So let's see if we can, let's play this. This is her announcement. This is on Instagram. Why I'm moving away from Disney content and why you should too. Let me just go back to where we were. Okay. She said she was dumping the mouse. Her Instagram and TikTok accounts, which had grown to tens of thousands of followers based on her Disneyland themed content, would be pivoting. As a queer and Latino woman, she would not abide by the company's decision to suspend the late night host for comments he made about Donald Trump's reaction to Kirk's death. Let's play this.
I'm moving away from creating Disney content because I cannot and will not support authoritarianism and fascism. Disney has benefited so much from creators like me who share the magic of the parks, new food, new merch, new drinks, while they bend their knee to the current administration who is working on stripping away our rights and freedom. Disney already has a long problematic history, which I have spoken up about before, and what's happening now cannot be ignored. Disney bending their knee to the current administration.
Okay. Bending their knee is complicity. This will not end well for Disney. And remember, there are more of us than there are of them. And I don't just mean our dollars, I mean our feet in the streets nonviolently. Now, I want to add for you, my dear friend, Kathy Griffin, had something to say about this for Reuters. Let me share that clip with you as well. Okay, here is Kathy. And she's friends with Jimmy Kimmel. So I think this is, she is speaking not just for herself, but I believe for him. Let's share the screen. And Kathy, let's go. Here we go.
Jimmy pushes boundaries. All the late night hosts do because it's their job. The way that we look at comedy is the way we consume popular culture, serious moments in the culture. And so as a comedian, I do believe it's a free speech issue. And I think whether or not you agree with Jimmy's comments or think his jokes are funny, we should all be in agreement, and the Supreme Court agrees, that it is covered under the First Amendment. When I went through my incident, I think it would have helped a lot if high-profile people, as well as powerful behind-the-scenes people, would have come out and said, whether or not I agree with Kathy Griffin or like her or whatever I thought about that controversial photo, she had the right to put that photo out there. And I feel very strongly that now is the time for everyone to do what they can to stand behind Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, and voices that are being silenced by the federal government. Controlling the media means controlling the narrative. And when you have the narrative, you have the people. And what's happening now to Jimmy Kimmel is Putin-esque. And I grew up in a country, in an environment where we looked at Russia and we thought, oh my gosh, we'll never have censorship like that. And as of Wednesday, we do.
I mean, yeah, what we feared is here. The only question is, what are we going to do about it? And let's be clear, and I'm going to move on to other topics in a moment. Let's be absolutely clear about the person we are talking about, Charlie Kirk. Now, there is this way that people are trying to rehabilitate him, people who don't know much about him, and those who do and don't understand how deeply painful and insulting it is that you think you want to carry on his work or pretend that he was someone trying to bring us together. I want to share with you now a series that someone put together on Instagram of things that Charlie Kirk had to say. This is who he was. Okay, let me...
Loot and murder.
Yeah, DEI stands for
one of the biggest...
Hold on, guys. Let me go back. I want to get to the beginning of this. I might not be able to, so let's just play it as is.
Can we also acknowledge, due to the laws under Jim Crow, that Black people were significantly hindered from economic advancement?
This is a really important question. The data shows not really. Black Americans are poorer today in 2024 than they were in the 1950s. The disappearance of the Black father has been the #1 driver of Black poverty in this country. At least agree that Black dads not being around is a bad thing.
Anyone's father not being around
is the great replacement theory. They want to replace white Anglo-Saxon Christian Protestants with Mexican Nicaraguans, with El Salvadorians.
You're comparing abortion to the Holocaust.
Absolutely, I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat serious. Empathy. I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made-up new age term that does a lot of damage. But more young women need to get married at a younger age and start having kids. Like, reject the siren song of modernity and have lots of kids. Like, being a partner at a local law firm actually isn't that big of a deal. Having 3 kids is a really big deal. Time for us to stop listening to rap music and this degenerate hip hop stuff and go back to the music that built our civilization. I believe marriage is between one man and one woman.
We must ban trans affirming care the entire country. I think that monogamous heterosexual marriage should be a prerequisite to adoption.
So you're comparing abortion to the Holocaust?
Absolutely, I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse. It's worse. Like a capitalist every single day, Cenk. I live as a capitalist. Okay? I live what I believe. What do? I get charity every single year. Hold on. Come on, Cenk, let's go.
Charlie, like, I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
When blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today, they were less.
I think you get the idea. Why in the world would I want to say this was a good person? All I want to say is I'm against political violence. I'm against all violence. It's horrific that he was murdered, period. The nature and way he was murdered put everyone at danger. It's horrific. And at the same time, it's not hard for me to tell you that the hate that he spewed is damaging, deeply divisive. And if you are praising him, you are associating yourself with his remarks. Okay? I do have that to say without question. Now we'll get more in a moment toward the end of the show on the funeral, but I have more. Remember how I said that the hinges have come off the door? That mostly happened on Saturday. I mean, what happened this Saturday, September 20th, 2025? If you didn't get earlier that we were in deep trouble, you would get it now, right? This is when, as I mentioned, Donald Trump put out that absolutely crazy True Social, right, comment. And then he edited it and put it back up again. He didn't retract it. It was on True Social where he was acting as if he was giving a direct message to Pam Bondi. Okay. And I'm going to share that with you right now so you can see what it says, because this moment should be the moment where he is impeached and removed, right? This is beyond a crisis in our democracy. We are now, as we talked about before, in full-blown authoritarianism. And it's not good, because even if he doesn't succeed in going after his political enemies, he is getting the media, he's getting universities, he's getting law firms, he is getting almost everybody to be afraid of him, which they shouldn't. And this is how he will try to maintain his grip on power for the rest of his life. Okay. And beyond, I think he would like a family legacy, maybe. So let me share this screen. Let me share this screen with you. Okay, I think you can see this. And let me read this to you. Pam, I have reviewed, let me do a voice. Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts. Actually, I hate the fucking voice. Let me just say what he said. So if I use a normal voice, you'll realize how crazy it is. Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially, quote, same old story as last time. All talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam, Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done, end quote. Then we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who was never going to do his job. That's why 2 of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit, and then we had no case. Now I know I fired him, and there is a great case and many layers and legal pundits say so. Lindsay is a really good lawyer and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. President Trump. So that is what he put out first. My friends, the only change he made to that, and I'm going to share this with you, he did not retract it. He wanted to make clear who the Lindsay was, that it wasn't Lindsey Graham, for example, it's Lindsay Halligan. Okay, so Terry Moran says this is a blatant attempt to corrupt our Constitution. It's exactly what our founders warned about. Donald Trump is demanding that the Attorney General use our sovereign powers, our Department of Justice, to get his personal revenge. It's wrong. Why? Here, the people rule. And you can see this version of it mentions Lindsay Halligan. Okay, so this was a message to Pam Bondi. And it's not frightening to me because he said he was going to do this. And people decided to say, nah, he won't do it. And by the way, Terry Moran was the independent journalist from ABC who was tough on Donald Trump, and they tried to I think they pushed him out. Anyway, the point I have making here is, what are we going to do about it? What is our leadership doing? Well, apparently, Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are begging Donald Trump to meet with them to talk about the funding bill, because right now the House has voted to fund the government toward the end of the year, and now it's up to the Senate, and you need 60 votes. They cannot do it without some Democratic support. And Donald Trump's already conceding the government might shut down. So what is our leadership doing? I don't know. But let me just be clear. When he said this guy lied, this guy who got appointed, this is a guy named Siebert. I'm going to show you what Donald Trump did. Let me just back up. Donald Trump wants Letitia James, the prosecutor in New York, the Manhattan DA. She's not the Manhattan DA. She is the Attorney General of New York. He wants her prosecuted on anything. Can't find anything. Because, of course, she successfully had her team prosecute. A jury found him guilty on 34 felony offenses, and Donald Trump is now a convicted felon. This is our president, and he's angry. So he told the prosecutors find something on her. So they're trying to find mortgage fraud. But the problem is, this is this whole thing. You've heard this before. He's trying to dig this up on Lisa Cook as well, that she had purchased a home. And everywhere she said it was going to be not her primary residence. It was going to be a secondary residence. But maybe there was one form that it didn't say that on. I don't know. But obviously, Siebert decided there wasn't anything here. You could not prosecute someone based on this. And so this is what Donald Trump had to say. Some little background on this.
James, are you disappointed that the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia has not prosecuted Letitia James? Do you intend to fire him?
Well, we're going to see what happens. I am not following it very closely. It looks to me like she's very guilty of something, but I really don't know. When I saw that he got approved by those two men, I said, pull it, because he can't be any good.
So you want him fired? You want him out?
Yeah, I want him out, yeah.
Okay. He said, I want him out. So he quit. Siebert quit. And then Donald Trump, you saw in his unhinged text to Pam Bondi, the AG, that he then, put it up onto social. He admits that he fired him. It's not clear. Of course, this is very dangerous. He now wants to get someone named Lindsay Halligan appointed to that position because she'll make it happen. He's also very hell-bent on just having Pam Bondi have her subordinates charge Adam Schiff with something, charge his enemies with something. Now, Adam Schiff isn't personally probably all that perturbed about it. He has connections. He can get counsel. I don't think he's going to prison. He's more concerned and should be about the chilling effect. Now, I've got more on this speech topic. One of the things that the Trump administration is trying to do, as you have seen, it's Pam Bondi doing it, it's Donald Trump, it's Stephen Miller. They're trying to leverage, to capitalize on the brutal murder of Charlie Kirk. And the murder was brutal, even if the man has nothing, you know, I despise what he said in life. I condemn the manner of his death. They are trying to use his death to crack down against liberal organizations that, as far as we can see, had absolutely nothing to do with it. And as part of it, they're trying to go after, they're claiming, we saw this the other day, Todd Blanche, I said, you know, there's no RICO case here, but they're trying to go claim and threaten groups, including Indivisible, who's organizing the next No King's Day March on October 18th, trying to go after them for RICO. Okay, that's not going to happen, guys, okay? But I want to share with you what Ezra Levin had to say, because we've had Ezra Levin on this show. You know that his co-founder, Leah Greenberg, they work together on Indivisible. Well, tomorrow is Rosh Hashanah, so I'm having a special episode. More on that tomorrow morning. But on Wednesday morning, Leah Greenberg will be my guest on this show, so she can talk more about these threats to our freedom of speech and assembly. But I want to share with you Ezra Levin on Jen Psaki speaking to this.
Last couple of days, I've talked to a lot of people who are wondering kind of what to do. They feel so outraged about Jimmy Kimmel being sidelined. It's a part of a much bigger story, to state the obvious. In your circles of people you talk to in small communities and towns who are organizing, are they prepared to do things like boycott Disney and as ESPN and Hulu, as you said? I mean, these are shows and programs people rely on. Are they ready to do something like that?
Jen, I got to be honest. Not only are they ready, they're beating us to it. We did not even put out a press release, and we were hearing from indivisible groups in LA and in New York that they were showing up at Disney headquarters, that they were showing up ABC News. We are following their lead. They are chomping at the bit. And for folks looking for what to do, you have power right now. You can do something. And I know Disney is this big, huge corporation. How can anybody actually take it on? Let me remind everybody watching. Disney's a huge corporation. Disney is run by human beings. Some of those human beings are cowards. Those cowards don't want to be named and shamed. And if you do that effectively, they will shift their behavior. So Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, Dana Walden, the co-chair of Disney Entertainment, both of whom are reported to be involved in the firing of Jimmy Kimmel, they don't want you to know that they're the ones who are pushing back against your First Amendment rights. They don't want to be shamed to shift their behavior. So here's my recommendation. If you subscribe to Hulu, if you subscribe to Disney Plus, cancel it. When you cancel it, it will give you the option to submit a comment and tell them, we love Disney. We would love to resubscribe, but we can't because Bob Iger and Dana Walden are ruining the company and making it impossible for us in good conscience to continue sending us your dollars. And when you're done doing that, take a screenshot, post it to your social media, and then talk to your friends and your family about how you can show up in public to protest these actions. If we collectively do that, Jen, they're going to shift behavior.
I love that. And we'll have more of that on Wednesday, I promise. Now, a couple last things before we get to Crazy Town. In the theme of law, money, and power, it won't shock you to learn that Donald Trump is using his power to brand something in his own name. HB1 visas at corporations. He is now trying to sell them for $100,000 a pop. Visas for sale. And what this means, of course, is that if a company wants to hire a foreign employee to work under this visa program, they will have to pay the Trump administration $100,000 per employee. So if they have 10 employees, that's $1 million. 100 in that category for a large company could be $10 million. Of course, this can be negotiated down, they've made clear. So again, another way to get companies to bend the knee. I want you to see this.
Most abused visa systems in our current immigration system has been the H-1B non-immigrant visa program. This is supposed to allow highly skilled laborers who work in fields that Americans don't work in to come into the United States of America. What this proclamation will do is raise the fee that companies pay to sponsor H-1B applicants to $100,000. This will ensure that the people they're bringing in are actually...
We need great workers, and this pretty much ensures that that's what's going to happen. I think, Sean, do you agree with that?
Well, they're $100,000 per year. So the whole idea is no more will these big tech companies or other big companies train foreign workers.
It's a shakedown. It's a shakedown. And a shakedown is obviously an opportunity for him to be paid individually. Not only calling it the golden visa, but I am sure there's a way to get a discount if you give money to something else of his, like his ballroom, which supposedly benefits us, or his own crypto. This is all about deal making to line his own pockets. It's really sick. Now, a couple more things before we get to Crazy Town. Donald Trump got really confused. He was speaking at an event this weekend, and he claimed that Cambodia and Armenia were at war. So as Olga Nestorova, a journalist, said, Cambodia and Armenia woke up not knowing they've been fighting each other. According to the president, Armenia has also been fighting Albania and Azerbaijan, not to be confused with Azerbaijan. He's a complete moron. And just so you know, she wanted to point out, here is Cambodia down in the right corner, and up on the left is Armenia. No, my friends, they have not been fighting each other. Okay, guys. One last thing. We like to, again, it's all about money, law, and power. How's the economy doing? And how does Donald Trump like when Fox News pushes back? Let's watch.
We're going to have numbers that like nobody's ever seen before,
when do you think
that
people are going to feel that? Because we do see polling that doesn't poll well in the economy. The recent Fox polling said 52% say the economy is worse under this administration. You've got unemployment at the highest rate in 4 years. Groceries made a big jump in the last term. So how is that? You're looking forward with these plans that you just talked about. When will people feel that, Mr.
Well,
Trump?
when the factories start opening. I mean, right now we're building them. And, Fox polling, I have to tell you, I've told you before, it's the worst polling I've ever had.
Okay. He doesn't like the numbers, so he says they're bad. We know the difference. Okay, my friends. So let's do Crazy Town. Before I play the music, I just want to set up this. Crazy Town is a moment from yesterday's funeral for Charlie Kirk. I did not watch it. I've seen clips. And to me, the only touching thing I have seen is when Charlie's wife looked up and said that she forgives the man who murdered her husband. This matters because when she's been asked about the death penalty, she says, I don't want that man's blood on my ledger. This is someone who, regardless of her husband's beliefs, I don't necessarily need to associate her with everything he said. I want to say that for her to forgive him reminds me of the members of the church, the Black church, who forgave Dylan Roof. It reminds me of so many people who have decided to forgive. Now, it's your choice. You don't have to forgive someone who has caused pain or violence, but she was living her values. But shortly after that, it went full batshit crazy town. And this is when I will play our music. Okay, guys. when I saw this, I thought it couldn't be true. I really did. So after Charlie Kirk's widow goes off stage, Donald Trump turned the entire funeral into an event about him. I kid you not. I need to play this for you and then some comments on the other side. This really happened.
If tomorrow all the things were gone, I'd work for all my life.
I cannot play the song because it's disgusting and because I might get a copyright notice. But what I want to point out to you as you are watching this, that no, this is not fake. They played fireworks for Donald Trump as he went out on stage. By the way, when he was in his box, little protected glass box during the funeral, he was chit-chatting and laughing it up, yucking it up with people around him. Not only that, I kid you not, he shared, or someone shared, a QR code during this event. Yes, I'm going to play this again so you can see this. Fireworks. And when he was up there, despite the words of the widow who wants to forgive the man who murdered her husband, Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, all of them use this for vengeance, to attack their political opponents, and to seek more division and more hate in this country. This is crazy, my friends. Yeah. Tasteless doesn't begin to describe this. They turned what should have been a respectful funeral into a political rally centering Donald Trump. Because here's the thing. I think he's jealous of Charlie Kirk. People are comparing Charlie Kirk to Jesus, which, as you know, as I've talked about earlier, he does not deserve. But Donald Trump will always, always center himself. And so this became a Trump rally. With this, my friends, I bid you adieu. Tonight is Rosh Hashanah, and tomorrow is the first day. I will not have a show, but there will be a show here. It's going to be so exciting. My friend Marissa Rothkopf-Bates and I already recorded. It's going to run live. She has a new book called The Secret Life of Chocolate Chip Cookies. And she bakes cookies with me, and we talk about things you have never known about baking. And it's very funny. We laugh a lot. Not much politics, but trust me, you want to watch this. And this will premiere live tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. And then I'll be back here on Wednesday with a real live show where Leah Greenberg of Indivisible will be my guest. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Gen Taub Show, where welcome everyone. Let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope, and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Gen Taub Show.